All right, everybody, welcome back. For the first time in like almost 500 episodes, I bring on one of the secret, most powerful marketing tools and people's to teach it to you with my friend Chanti. And we talk about quizzes. And I mean, not slimy quizzes, not bad quizzes, but like the secret ingredient that is especially important in 2024. And you will be seeing some of them from us because in this episode, we talk about how quizzes can be a powerful tool for engaging and connecting with customers by providing personalized answers to their burning questions. Huge. Creating a safe and trusting environment for customers to share their challenges and goals, and how it's key in building a strong connection. How personalization and empathy are vital in marketing and business as they allow you to meet customers where they are and provide tailored solutions. And quizzes are such a powerful tool for building relationships and making customers feel seen and understood. How authenticity and empathy are key in creating effective quizzes and marketing strategies, and how you start small with quizzes and continuously improve them based on feedback. And this episode is loaded, and she reinvigorated this entire spark of this incredible tool that I completely forgot about. And it didn't go anywhere, but it is back and it belongs at the forefront of everything. And so without further ado, let's just let her break it down for you in today's episode. So let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And in traditional fashion, we're gonna go dessert first. But before I do, I also feel like I just jumped into a time capsule because not only am I like super excited, and I told today's guest, I was like, I am so excited to listen. And I need to say this. This will be the first time on this podcast that the word quiz has even come up. And I mean that in 400 something episodes, almost 500, we have not talked about it. And quite frankly, it's a very secret tool that I still use, but I needed somebody qualified and relevant. And so we found the expert, we found the best one who also puts empathy and connection and relationships at the forefront and has nothing but credibility and results to back it up. And then we were even both paleo food bloggers at the same time. And so we could have hit record 30 minutes ago, except we've been talking about blogging and paleo and history and bad business names. And so without further ado, Chanti, I am super honored and excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, George. I'm so happy to be here. Real full circle moment happening.
It is a full circle moment, and you just embody that whole Canadian ecosystem of being like the nicest, sweetest person ever, and you guys always have that rap going. So I am stoked to be here. And so I'm gonna lay this out pretty cool because we were talking before the show, and I was like, all right, I wanna really make sure that like people get this and understand the power of this and like what quizzes can do and understanding the game. And you're like, well, I actually had a couple ideas, and I decided to look at your website and figured, well, we might as well just give them the meat first and talk about a couple of ideas that you could do. And then you start speaking to me, and I'm like, you know me, you get me. And so I am really, really excited, but I don't even know how to tee this up than to kind of give you the platform and just say, can you explain the power of quizzes? And then let's start breaking this down right from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're talking about quizzes in the context of you are asking someone a set of questions for the purpose of giving them a more specific answer to their most burning questions. And the premise we move with is that you very likely serve a diverse audience. Not everyone fits into that nice little neat and tidy, this is my ICA box and this is the only person I'm talking to, right? It's almost outdated at this point to think that way. We know that we're serving multifaceted human beings who are at all different stages in their journeys, regardless of what niche or industry you're in, regardless of what you sell. So how do we speak to them in a more specific and relevant and resonant way? A quiz or an assessment can help you to do that.
Okay, so before we go any further, because I love this already, but let me just, for everybody listening, ICA, for those that don't speak acronym, is like ideal client avatar, which is something I told everybody to throw in the trash a long time ago because nobody cares that you drive a minivan or how much money you make, and it never worked anyways. And also, I'm going to pre-frame this for everybody. One of the biggest questions I get asked all the time is like, how do you scale connection and relationships at a massive level, and we make the mistake of thinking that our job is to do it instead of helping somebody else become the hero of their own journey, find their place in the world, and like you said, personalize answers to support them to their most burning questions by meeting them where they are and not trying to force them to go into one place where you think they belong.
Yes.
And so I am so excited about this, and I'm going to shut
You
up
got
now.
it. You got it. So, yeah, it solves that big problem that so many of us have, is that we're talking to so many different types of people, and we acknowledge that and we grapple with it, but we don't always have a solution to actually move forward. So the quiz helps you do that. And when we were chatting, I said, I looked at your website, and right off the bat, I could tell that you serve people, business owners with a very similar value set, right? That's what they have in common. But what differentiates them is their levels of experience, where they're at in their business, what their big challenges are, what their big goals are. And you're helping everyone from the person who's literally just getting started to $1 billion company that wants your insight into relationship marketing and how it can work for them. So you're not going to tell the $1 billion company and the person who's just getting started the same thing, right? There's like the completely different paths, but you can still capture both of them and everyone in between when you speak to their value set and what they came to you for, which, you know, is nuanced. If we were to summarize it, if I were to summarize it, I would say relationship driven marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? How can I use that in my business? What does that look like? What are the benefits of it? What, like all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for you, I would immediately go to a quiz or assessment that's angled around like you're getting your personalized relationship marketing roadmap. And then you would answer a series of questions that would help you to identify. And this is where like we are approaching the questions as if we're having a conversation at scale. So people always ask me, how do I write really good quiz questions? What does that look like? And I just tell them to imagine that you have a physical shop and you're standing behind the counter and someone walks in and they're asking you, let's say it's a tea shop, and they ask you what kind of tea they should choose. They've never been in your shop before. Like, where do I start? And you are going to ask them questions. And it's going to come very naturally. It's going to feel totally organic because you know your tea selection like the back of your hand. And you're going to ask them about their preferences, and you're going to ask them if they want herbal or caffeinated. You're going to ask them all manner of questions. And so in the same way with a quiz, if they were coming in and they're looking for help with relationship marketing, you're going to ask them, okay, where are you at in your business right now? Like, do you have a validated offer that you know people want? How big is your audience? What are you struggling with? What are your big goals? And based on that information, you can then give them that personalized roadmap that's going to fit them for where they're at. And it's going to help you identify who's a fit for which of your offers, so that when you're building that relationship over email, you're showing up in their inbox because they love you. After they take your quiz, they get this amazing detailed result. Immediately they want more. Okay, let's continue this conversation. And then you have the information you need to show up for them with what they need. So that's one idea that I had. And then like another one you could do is more personality specific. So something around your relationship marketing style. And that one could be based on introversion or extroversion. Like your person who's super introverted might feel intimidated by the idea of relationship marketing. It might scare the shit out of them. Your
Yep.
extrovert might think, oh, I'm already doing this. I'm talking to people all day long. Like, what more is there for me to do? What more is there for me to know? And, we know that there likely is more there. So
Yep.
that could be one facet of the personality dynamic. You could look at it through the lens, like you mentioned, human design when we were chatting. You could look at it through the lens of human design. If that's the system that you're most familiar with and your audience is familiar with it, like, cool. Tell me your human design, and I'll give you some insights into your relationship marketing style. Like, I'm a projector, and
Yep.
that that means I'm waiting for the invitation.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm waiting for the invitation. Does that mean I can't be proactive? What does that look like when it comes to marketing? So you can answer that question. If you're more familiar with the Enneagram, you could look at it through the lens of the Enneagram. Like, there's so many different ways that you can approach personality, and you can combine them both. Like, there's lots of things you could play with. And then the last idea I had, and this one's a little bit more um, assessment style, like it's less speaking to who they are as a person and more speaking to where they're at in their business and how you can serve them. So I saw you work with people on their customer journey. So something like, what part of the customer journey do you need to focus on most? Like, where do you start? But that might be something that you would do further along with someone.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, those are just, off the top of my
All
head,
right.
a few ideas.
I love it because I got a lot to unpack here for everybody, and I could do this with you all day. The moment you said imagine brick and mortar business, I'm like, I got you, sister. That is the number one example that I use for how to like build or scale businesses. But like to even summarize for people, like the most important thing, call it marketing, call it relationship building, call it business, is us meeting our customers where they are and both of us agreeing that that's the current state in the map, which creates basically a pin in the map. And I say this to people all the time. If you open Google Maps on your phone and you put in a destination and hit go, the first thing it says to you is, where are you?
Right.
Right? Like you have to know where you are. And I am going to speak to a couple of mistakes that I see people make, but one big one all the time is that they wait or they spend their time marketing, getting attention, getting on calls, and then they spend half that time just trying to figure out what field they both meet on, and then they try to scale that, and they wonder why their business doesn't scale, right?
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing you say, and I'm over here tickled like crazy, and I was like, oh, wait till I tell you about why I teach the 3 mistakes the way that I do. Is because it empowers both parties, right? And it also brings self-aware people, because a lot of the mistakes people fall into with marketing as well is they end up speaking so heavily to people's pain
Mm,
points or so heavily to their solutions, but then they get a problem aware person
mhm.
or a solution aware person. And I'll explain the difference in a minute. If you're constantly speaking to people's pain, then the moment they come in, their frame is they resonate with that story of pain. And so no matter what you give them, there's more
Yeah.
pain. Well, the inverse isn't better either, because the solution aware is, oh, next best thing, next best thing, next best thing, next best thing. And both of them typically happen because there's not an accurate current state of where they are that you both agree is like, oh, that's a really good spot to be. And so I love this so much. And like on every level, I'm already like tickled over here. And I'm like, yep, 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 yep. And I'm gonna run this by you because I get annoyed with how much I teach the current mistakes, right? The 3 mistakes, right? The triangle of poop, as Branson calls it, my
Yeah.
son, right? But also when I go keynote or when I go on a podcast with an audience that I don't know, that 3 mistake is replacement of a quiz or an assessment, because I'm creating a third party like thing, this neutral thing, this
Mhm.
model, this framework that says, hey, these are the mistakes I see people make, and here's some examples. Do you see yourself making these as well? Like, did these happen in your
Yeah.
business? Do you feel these in your business? Because, when I'm on stage with 500 people, I'm not going to put them through a quiz, but the same theory and the same psychology
Mm-hmm.
applies, because what I'm saying is like, hey, this is also the biggest mistakes that I see people make. And if you are making any of these, then when we come have a conversation, we can agree that like, oh my God, I'm in the zone of doubt. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, how do I fix it? I'm like, well, that's easy now. Tell me about your business. Or I'm in the drown the journey. How do I fix it? Right. And I'm like, oh, well, what's your offer? Who's your audience? And so the current state concept is something that I don't think everybody understands the value in, but the brick and mortar example is such a powerful example, because you can't assume that when somebody walks into your front door and even they say, I want
Mm-hmm.
tea, that you know exactly what tea they want, or I'm coming to look for an outfit. You have sizes, you have differences, different personalities. And even if we get into like, really, there's only like 4 personalities in the lens of like human psychology, which is controller, promoter, supporter,
Yeah.
analytical. They all require different amounts of evidence
Yes.
to be able to take that journey. Cause like I'm a controller. So like I actually, before this podcast, I ran out on an errand because I had time, but I called the store. I'm like, hey, I need a pair of Timberland boots in size 9, this exact one. Tell me when they come in, right? I don't need to try them on. I don't need to do any of that. I just know what to go get, right? But then you have supporters who need to know features and
Mm-hmm.
benefits to give themselves empowered language to justify their decision to themselves. Then you have supporters who need to see other people in the example and in the results so that they can picture themselves in it. And then you have analyticals who need every single stone uncovered to feel
Yeah.
safe to be able to do it. And in what I'm hearing you say, and I'm so tickled right now, is that like assessments and quizzes allow us to deliver all of those, but also the most important part is having people come in and meet us on our values and our beliefs, which happens to be the only way to do business in 2024, because COVID was a gift and created constraint across the
Yeah.
board. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm
And I
in.
love that you brought
I,
up those 4 personality types and how each of them needs to be communicated to in order for them to make a confident decision. Like this is beyond even the lens of quizzes. This isn't just like all of communication, right? And I recently came across this really crazy tool, and I will find out what it's for. It's on the tip of my tongue, what it's called. But it's basically a plugin that integrates with all social platforms, and it does personality analysis based on what people are posting and how they communicate on their social profiles. Like it's borderline super creepy, and it's all AI,
yeah.
right? But
Oh, yeah.
what's interesting is the people who are using it and the companies that are using it are seeing that for the most part, they attract 1 or 2 personality types. So it's really likely that you're not actually attracting the whole spectrum of personality types. And when you ask that question to your people and you understand, okay, I'm getting a lot of really analytical people. Maybe that's because the way that I communicate is actually very rooted in logic and evidence, and I'm not super emotional. And so, like, this makes sense. I'll do more of this. But for the people who are coming into my world who are more like the supporter archetype, I can add more stories and testimonials and emotion, and my analytical people, like, it's cool. They can skim and still get what they need. Like, everyone can get what they need when
Yep.
we know what they need.
Yeah. I love this. Now I want to ask you a question about this too, because like even your recommendations are things that like I have in my brain, right? And our website didn't even exist till last year. I had no website, no social. I was just doing this all word of mouth. And, my ex-wife's like, hey, you need to start posting on the internet again. I can't hear you talk about this stuff anymore. Like, can you just go back on the
Yeah.
internet, right? And so website was born, but you also nailed it. Like, I'd say 90% of my audience are people that I serve aren't the ones that call me and put me in consulting and hire me for one-on-one and bring me in for, 5, 6 figure retainers to scale their business. But also those are the people I love serving all day. And the things that I share are applicable at every level, but the depth of where they're applied is different based on where you are. But the reason like we use relationship speed algorithms, or I help you put the heart back into your business and marketing, is because we're speaking to people's beliefs. And you talked about
Mm-hmm.
this at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning, right? It's not selling the bridge. It's talking about the after state in our belief system. And like you believe so much in like empathy and connection and nothing being boring, right? And so like what are some of the important things that people have to understand and include? Because quizzes are not like, hey, tell me how much revenue is in your business. Like,
Yes.
tell me how many clients you had today. So I'd love to hear you riff on that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is speaking to values in the actual messaging of whatever you're going to create, right? Like from the lens of marketing, it's an easy example because you know that a lot of the people coming to you are like so over the hustle culture and like bro marketing paradigm and the control paradigm, and they're like, exit the matrix. I got out of the 9 to 5 corporate life, whatever it was, because I hate that world and I want to create the new world and I want to do something different. So, but all that they're seeing, or much of what they're seeing, is is just an extension of the culture, of the dominant culture, right?
Yep.
So automatically right away, you need to say like that's not what we're doing here. You can find a way to grow your business, scale your revenue, help more people that doesn't feel gross, that doesn't feel manipulative, that is heart centered, that aligns with your values. Let me show you.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this with thousands of people and I can help you too. Come answer some questions and I'm going to hook you up. And of course, you're not going to
Yeah.
be that long-winded, but
Well, no, and I'll give everybody a tangible example too, because like I teach this to my private clients. When we teach you how to build a movement, what we're really saying is like, what do you believe to be
yeah,
true? What do you stand for? What do you stand against? And I teach them in scripture statements, right? And there's something that are repeated over and over because it creates consistency and congruency no matter where you are anyways. But everybody on this podcast has heard me say hundreds of times, you're not one funnel away.
yeah.
The reason I say that is because without making anybody bad and wrong, except Russell, who I know personally, and I think he's an incredible man,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I have a different belief
Mm-hmm.
system. They're able to also be like, wow, I think and feel like him. That's my people. Or when I'm like, hey, you can't adopt any more children until you feed the ones that I have. What I'm saying is that scaling comes from retention,
Yeah.
not acquisition, but I'm saying it in a way that is around beliefs and seeing the world. Or like I was on a podcast earlier and someone's like, well, how do you test this? I'm like, well, it's really, really easy. Would you feel comfortable if your mother, yeah, no, I got you, team. You're going to end with most likely right after the you're not one funnel away and you can't adopt any more children till you feed, and then it'll lead into this. Um, but yeah, so even in the lens of speaking to beliefs, like I was just on a call and, you know, one of my goals when I'm speaking to people is to allow them to see themselves in what I believe to be true so that we have this neutral point. And so we're on the call and he's like, well, I don't know, you know, like I make these customer journey mistakes. I do everything. And I said to him, I'm like, well, you know, would you be okay if your grandmother went through your funnel? And he was like, whoa. And I was like, well, if you're not okay if your grandmother goes through your funnel, why are you okay that my family goes through your funnel, right? And there's ways to speak to beliefs and to speak
Right.
to the things that we stand for without calling it out. I'm like, oh, you shouldn't transact with people, you shouldn't take blah blah blah, because they hear all that language all the time. But all of those are like examples of like values and beliefs. And so I love that you hit that, because I think, and I'll say this to everybody, you know, back in 2020, 2019, you could say whatever you wanted. People had 3 gym memberships, they go to 6 events a year, but it's trust economy 101. And if somebody doesn't know what you stand for or stand against, they have not enough evidence to feel safe to even move in. And so adding values and beliefs to quizzes or any place where you're communicating is the most important thing.
Absolutely. So I love that you gave that example. You're not one funnel away. That's a Georgism, and you probably have many, many Georgisms, right? Like things that you say again and again that you use as examples and metaphors to communicate the values that you are calling in people who align with that and who get it. So how you do that in your quiz or assessment is at every touch point. So with every question, with every result, with the overarching messaging, with everything that you're doing to promote it, you're weaving those in. And the way that I talk about it is I try to get people who are doing this work to ask themselves, like, what do I want to be known for? If someone is gonna have an idea of me or my brand in there at some little compartment in their brain, what does that look like? What do I want that to be? Because you have a certain level of control over that. And so that's the thought process that you're moving forward with. And so for you, I would ask a question in the quiz that's like, what are you going to, like, you're going to puke if you hear this statement one more time. You're so sick of it.
Yep.
And like, A, you're one funnel away. B, the only way, rise and grind, like it's the only way, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, work hard today so that you don't have to work tomorrow. Like, whatever those statements are that your people are tired of hearing, that's what you're going to put in there. I have a question in one of my quizzes that's like, what does everyone tell you to do that you actually just don't want to do? Like, you hate doing it. There's something within you that like rages against it. And the answers are like constantly posting on social media. Like, it's exhausting. It's draining. I don't care. Being on video all the time. Like, do I really have to do that? Like, there's so many things. And all of this is excavated from our brains and our hearts and what we know of our people and what they want and what they're tired of. And so that's woven into all of the questions. And then in the results, it's actually more powerful to, before you tell someone new information, like, we don't have an information problem as entrepreneurs, right?
Nope.
There's lots of things going on. There's implementation, there's alignment, there's like so much overwhelming confusion. And there's also just like, I just want to be seen and recognized. And your job as the architect of this whole journey is to first reflect back to them what they just told you. And this is like a very basic conversational skill, right? Like, anytime you're in dialogue with someone, I think it's in nonviolent communication.
It is. It is.
Right? So you're reflecting back to them and saying, like, based on what you told me, this is what I'm seeing. And based on, as an outsider, but someone who's an expert in this world, here's what I see is possible for you. And it's like dopamine. Let's create an emotional connection before we try to do anything else.
Okay, I gotta pause you for a second and give you kudos. Like, we will be best friends for life after this point. Like, I am like, holy moly, do not let us in the room with some of these businesses, because I am like, yes. So number one, and I have said this for 400 podcasts, human beings need to feel seen, heard, respected, and loved. I'll give you the science of this as well. When somebody is coming into our world, it used to be away from pain or towards pleasure. It's 2024. It is 100% right now away from pain.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody is in pain, they are in a triggered state, which means there's an open loop for something in their life. Whether it's nonviolent communication, whether it's mirroring or labeling, which is all the same thing. For everybody listening to this, the 5 steps that I teach you are designed to do this on purpose. You know, that magical first step called acknowledge? That is what actually closes the loop, which allows them to be like, wait, I have a current state in the map. I feel seen, and unlocks possibility for what's to come. and you nailed something and you said it, and you're like, what you believe and what you stand for comes from you, your mind, your heart, 100%. And I'm going to say this very bluntly. If you don't know what you stand for, no one else can feel safe to come into your world. And just like you have questions that you give people, like when I start working with my private clients, the first thing I ask them, and I use inversion theory for this all the time. So if nobody knows what inversion theory is, it's like, if you tell me, if I try to ask you and you're in a place of pain, like what you want, what you'd like your day to look like, you can't tell
Mm.
me. But if I'm like, what are the three things you don't want to happen? You will go boom, 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 boom. Because our brains, when triggered, our reticular activating system speaks that language. And so one of the first things I asked them was like, hey, what are the 5 things everybody in your industry does that makes you want to puke? And I was like, what are the 5 things that they say that literally make your skin crawl? And like one of mine is you're one funnel
Mm-hmm.
away. And they're like, oh, I'm like, no, just write down every single thing that you don't like in your industry, in your niche, in people that sell products like you. And I'm like, make a list. And I mean, make it exhaustive, because the more evidence you have, the better. And what you stand for and believe in is just the opposite of those statements. And that is what starts to have you do this. But you've nailed so many parts, because here's the other part. Every decision a human makes is an emotional based
Mm-hmm.
decision. And the emotion required is safety. And the only way to create safety is to acknowledge that you see somebody where they are, that doesn't make them feel bad and wrong, that doesn't create pressure and force, and sure as crap does not objection handle them. And the things that I hear of like, well, I want to talk to my husband before this.
Right.
Well, no, you can't do that. Make the decision
Yeah.
now. I'm like, nothing like breaking a relationship while trying to sell a
No kidding.
solution. No, you remove agency from people, which is disempowering, and then it conditions codependency and it kills both of your results and your business. Like, you are speaking my love language right now. I feel so validated and seen
Me
right now.
too.
It is so
Man.
powerful, because it, in even in this lens of like just understanding a human, we also, if we think about how we operate and how we consume and what we buy and why we buy, most of the time we fail to give that to our customers. But it's not because we're intentionally doing it. We forget how far removed from their before state we currently live in.
Right.
Like, we're in the aspirational after state, and it looks like one step, but it's really like 38 steps.
Okay, okay, okay. And that is where, in my mind, that is where the empathy comes in, right? And
Yes.
that empathy muscle. And that's like something that is not always an instant, I sit down to write and it lands and I know exactly how to connect with the person who's 30 steps over here from where I am today. Like,
Yes.
to me, there's tools, and a quiz is like it's a weird thing to say, but it is one of them that can help you develop and deepen empathy. But it's not the only one, right? There's so many. But
So many.
anything that allows us to deepen our connection to what our people are saying and how they are communicating their challenges and what they want. And like, I love to do a quiz and then as the relationship deepens a bit, ask for more insight, like in your own words, tell me. And that's
Uh-huh.
where, whenever
Oh.
I'm reading actual survey responses, I'm like crying
Mm-hmm.
because, like, fuck, like, you just wrote 3 paragraphs about how your son has autism and you have to, like, put him in the public school system and leave him every day and go to this soul sucking job at Home Depot, and all you really want is to build a business so you have the freedom to take care of your child for this like small window of years that you have with them. Like, it is stuff like that like, oh my god, okay, now I'm connected to why am I even doing this in the first place, right?
Yep. Yep. And here's the crazy girl. I am like, I am your number one fan. You have me in your corner for anything you need. I have so many things to share with you. But literally, even when I used to teach copywriting, I was like, do you want to know why you're wasting money? Because the most effective copywriting is copying and pasting what your customers say and not changing the
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. 100%.
But if we go back to the beginning stages of business, and this is one of the things that I teach people all the time, before you had space, meaning you had the money to scale or things to go wide or things to add distractions, Parkinson's law dictated that you could only focus on what mattered, which was you were directly connected to the
Mm-hmm.
people. And people convinced you with either stories that you were taught or caught that the only way to scale was to remove the connection point, which was the number one lever that worked in the first place. And there is no having impact and no scaling a business and no getting to 1 million or 5 million or 10 million if you're disconnected from the people who pay your bills, who support your team and support your staff, and to also think that it's a set it and forget it, because we change every day. And so to them, the state of the world changes our people's beliefs. It changes what happens. But literally, when I go into companies and I fix their customer journeys to scale, the first people I bring in are the customer service department.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, give me every complaint, give me every phone call, tell me every reason why people left. Now let's go fix them. And then magically, people feel seen and validated, but it is the direct source of gold. And then I will go watch somebody spend $1 million on customer data that you can just pick up the phone or send
Yeah.
a message or send an email and get the same. And you even said something else that I teach that I've never shared publicly. Even when you're building, see, this is why I love it. Once you stick a quarter in me, I'm like, you're going to get all of it. Just ask, right? Give me a stack of chocolate chip pancakes and ask me a question, and my human design is going to give you everything I know, right? But you also just said something massive when you were talking about the depth of people's answers. And I tell people all the time, you sell a product or a service, you think it's a really good idea to ask for a review 6 days in when they haven't even received it in the mail, right? And so even when I'm designing customer journeys, I have to condition the relationship for them to feel safe. If I walk up to a stranger on the street and I'm like, hey, tell me what your biggest fear in life is, they don't have any onus to share that with me, nor do we have the depth of the relationship. So even when I'm building customer
Right.
journeys, I ask people for the first, and I have a rule for this, the first 30 days, you get an emoji or one word. The second 30 days, you get a sentence. And the next 30 days, you can ask for a paragraph,
Mm.
because you have to make people feel safe. But marketing and business is a two-way relationship, not a one-way
Yeah.
dictatorship,
Yeah.
right? And it has to be both ways. So I'm over here like, yeah, girl, like, let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because there's people out there that teach run paid ads to a survey to get those deep insights like right off the bat. And it
Yep.
doesn't work, because
Nope.
like nobody wants to fill out a survey. That what's in it for them when they fill out a survey? Very little. It's a favor to the person who's asking the questions, that most often, even if it's incentivized, they're doing that and responding because you've served them and supported them and built trust with them. And they want to
Yep.
see you succeed. So
Yep.
having that time to actually build that relationship is huge. And the quiz piece, it works because it's about them. They get something in return. And like, yes, you get to see the analytics and how people are responding to your questions and see the trends. And like, that's very helpful data. But for the most part, it's about the person on the receiving end getting
It's
the answers
always,
they need.
always. Well, just to tie in the triangle that I talk about, most people on the podcast know it. The zone of doubt's the first mistake, but the inverse journey, I will give everybody the definition again. But the inverse journey is when there's any touch point in a customer journey where it's about you instead of them and their results. And if you want to write this down, because you've heard me say it 1,000 times, your customers' results will tell them everything they need to know about you. But results are not paid. Results are clarity, one step closer to their goal, one step closer to a solution. But it requires that they feel seen, heard, and respected, not forced into a path that doesn't fit. We all know what it feels like to be told it's this one way, right? I even tell people, if anybody ever says it's my way or the highway, or I can guarantee your
Mm-hmm.
results, you better get a restraining order, because that's my red flag of marketing, right?
Absolutely.
I'm stealing Matt Rife's thing, like red
Mm-hmm.
flag, red flag, right? And there's so much depth in what you're sharing here. But even in using quizzes or assessments, what it's really doing is allowing you to understand where your people are and meet them there, because that's what leadership is. That's what marketing is. That's what business is. Because when we raise our hand and we say, hey, we're going to help you achieve this thing, we didn't say our way. We said, we'll help you. And there isn't a one size fits all. And so you need to be able to connect with people and collect information while also sharing with them like who you are and why you're here and what you stand for and why they should trust you. Because let me remind you, you're not the only person they're looking at all. And I'll give you another one of my beliefs that I say all the time is you'll never win on width, but you're guaranteed to win on depth.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's day and age, everyone's like next, 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 or today. You'll spend 9 months courting somebody, then they'll buy, and you're like, great, here's our automated relationship. Good luck.
Right.
And I don't teach this as a strategy and tactic, but every time I say it, I'm like, you guys know that like we get followers on Instagram and I take the time to send them a video and thank them for following me. And they've never heard from me
Mm-hmm.
before. And that one thing, 15 seconds, gets more people on my calendar and in my ecosystem because of how shallow everybody else is. And they don't feel seen anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, girl, preach. Like, I'll just give you my podcast and keep teaching people all of this because this is so valuable and so powerful, like so much that like I haven't even asked how you got into this. And I feel a little bit guilty, but like, how did you even like get here from like food blogger to homesteading to like now? Like, I can feel how much you love doing this, like, because it really empowers people to connect with their customers. But like, how did you get into
Oh
this?
man, it's very random. So the food blogging, I was not like civilized caveman level successful. I was like, okay, how do I make $1,000 a month from this blog so that I don't have to go back to work and with my newborn baby is at home. So
Yeah.
I was doing it and quickly learned it's really hard to have a successful money making food blog, at least at the time.
Yes.
And so I started doing recipe development and writing content for people. And that was actually what I was able to build a business on, was writing. So I was doing that and simultaneously trying to grow the food blog. It was a huge struggle fest. And eventually I discovered copywriting and there's actually money in copywriting. Like, I'm going to move over here. And I started studying it and working with mentors, freelanced for years, got a full-time position working with a spiritual development company as their copywriter. And that's where I discovered quizzes. So I did a quiz with them that just popped off, was really successful, really well received. And then a few months later, that relationship ended. I got laid off. I had all my eggs in this one basket and I didn't know what to do next. So I asked myself, what did I do there that is sort of noteworthy and I could turn into its own business? And that quiz thing just stood out. And I had no idea if it would work for other types of businesses, but I just ran with it. And it did work, lo and behold, for many other types of businesses. And I just started creating quizzes for lots of different niches, brands, and it turned into a whole thing. But through that, like, I discovered through the results that clients were getting, the empathy piece became evident to me. So it didn't start out that way. Like, it started out as just like this thing that works. It's a tactic. It's sexy. People are eating it up. Clients want it because they always want really cost-effective, affordable subscribers. And that was sort of the in. But as I started seeing how people were responding to the results that they were getting from these quizzes, I was like, whoa, your person over here just sent you a message saying they're in their bath and they're like sobbing because they feel so seen, and like you get them. My clients are telling me this about their customers and students and audience who's taking their quizzes, and that's when it landed for me that like, okay, there's something more to this. Like what is going on? Why is this working this way? What's happening? And then I just started going deeper down the rabbit hole of how our minds work. And here we are.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like you don't build quizzes. You build relationship connection machines that empower people to feel seen and
Yeah.
safe
Yeah.
and then value the alignment of the founder and do what most can't
Right.
do
The
because they
language.
live in
Yeah. The
transaction.
language. And that's where I'm at now. I'm like, this language doesn't match. So I don't even know what to call it, because calling it
Yeah.
this sounds like cheap BuzzFeed surface level bullshit. So I love that
Yeah.
you said that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because for real, it's
Yeah. Well,
something else.
and here's the thing, like I'm a breathwork teacher, right? One of the things we say all the time is your energy precedes you. Like people can smell it from a mile away. And the gift of the world from 2020 to
Mm-hmm.
2023 is that everybody's filters are through the roof because they got over transacted, overdone. Everybody's starting to wake up. But I'm going to tell you that relationships were always the secret. The internet just made us lazy, right? And it's not that people were buying more, it's that they didn't care as much and they'd buy things and not use them. They'd join programs and not care about the results. Like I still see it all the
Yeah.
time. So it's like, oh my God, I've bought like 20 programs I've never listened to, I've never logged into,
Yeah.
but that's gone
Yeah.
now. And when that changes, so do we. But it's always been a human connection and a human behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the tools that we use are designed to help us scale impact, not to scale revenue, not to scale acquisition, because people also forget that as of 2023, 93% of marketing is word of mouth. And I will tell you on the back end of one of those transactions, and when somebody doesn't get results and somebody asks a question about you, you're not going to like what they
Mm-hmm.
say. But when you can connect with people, like tools are not the
Yeah.
solution. Tools and quizzes allow you to create a relationship that couldn't typically be made before that allows somebody to make progress and feel safe and seen and then be in a better position to implement or use what it is that you have to offer if it's a fit.
Right.
And if it's a fit, the decision's made because the relationship's there, but you're also conditioning the relationship from the get-go. And Maya Angelou nailed this. Nobody remembers what you said. They remember how they made you feel. And that's from the first touch point.
Yes.
The first one, right? And I say this to people all the time, like you can hit a nail in a fence and pull the nail out, but the hole's still there. And no matter how much wood filler you put on, the integrity of that board is never the
Mm-hmm.
same. And that's what most quizzes turned
Mm-hmm.
into. That's what most assessments turned into. And like, I mean, I even, some of the things you said earlier, I love Jake and Kat, two of my clients in Australia. They run the Institute of Health, but we have a beefy quiz because they help functional health practitioners build and scale their business understanding blood work better. And we have like a 48 question quiz that most people only get like 50%
Yeah.
on. And everyone's like, oh my God, well, the quiz went up and it was getting like a 43% completion rate. Well, we changed 4 words or statements on the landing page and it went to like 81. And then I was like, wait, why don't, when we're going through the
Mm-hmm.
quiz, why don't we add our empathy statements and things like that? And we even went and added personality. And so on the hard questions, we put a winky face emoji on the right answer. And then we would like every 5 questions, we're like, and this is going to help you do this. And this is how it
Mm-hmm.
believes here. And
Yeah.
like literally they have like a 96% completion
Amazing.
rate on like a 30-minute quiz that basically makes you realize you don't know what you think you know in the lens of your
Yeah.
clients. But it's not because of the results of the quiz, it's because of how they feel going through it and they feel seen. And the number one, and here's the biggest one, on the landing page before the quiz, the one thing that made the biggest difference, we said, and just so you know, these results will never be shared between anybody but you and us. And
Mm.
no matter what you score, this is about us making improvements because if any of us know all of these answers, we shouldn't be in business since it changes so often.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
empathy and that's connection. And that's also speaking to what people feel. And then they're like, oh my God, I feel the same way. I'm like, we know, because I didn't want to take that quiz. I got like 6% on that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so, I love like how much you talk about the depth of this, but I think also in hearing you speak about this, like it tickles my heart because what you're really helping people do is you're helping them connect with people how they always wanted to connect with people and not knowing how to do it in a way that was scalable. And there's so much baked in marketing and things that support them and finding their current state and feeling empowered and knowing where they are and then knowing what improvements can be made. Like I'm your biggest fan.
Thank you. I can feel it.
I'm
Oh
in.
man. When you said that Maya Angelou quote, I just laughed because I say that all the time. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
true. It's so true. And yeah, I love that you made those small tweaks and saw that difference that it made because sometimes that's all it takes. It's just
Yep.
like, here's the reason why you're doing this and why we developed this tool and how it will help you. And being
Yeah.
that upfront from the get go, cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love
So I got a couple like probably like really easy questions that people are probably like playing around in their brain too, but like what like tools do you recommend to use to like build quizzes or
Mhm.
do assessments? Like are there any favorites that you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many now. It's crazy. I use Interact most often. It's it's
What is
called
it?
Interact.
Oh, Interact.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a really accessible building software. Um,
Okay.
and they take data privacy really seriously. So, like you mentioned, your quiz results will never be shared. And that's actually really important for a lot of people because
It
some
is.
of the softwares out there are actually just data harvesting tools, and that's how they make most of their money. Is they go
We're gonna unlock a whole nother podcast on this one that's gonna open a can of worms because I'm about to do an hour riff on that.
beautiful. Have you read Surveillance Capitalism?
No, I have not, but I spent 13 years of my life with a top secret clearance, so I'm
Whoa.
hyper aware
Okay.
and yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, I
You know.
mm-hmm,
You know. So yeah, a lot of those companies are selling data. So Interact is really good. They don't do
mm-hmm.
that. Um, Typeform is another one
Yep,
that's like most people already have a Typeform account. So just doing a
yep,
quiz on there is easy. If you're really nerdy or you're a bigger company and you're more serious about segmentation, then Typeform might not be the best bet because what something like Interact allows us to do is carry the information that you're capturing from the quiz over to your email marketing system so that like each person who's taken the quiz in your active campaign or your convert kit or whatever you use on their profile it says how they answered a certain question, what result they got, and then if I like for me I identify who's a copywriter because I have a certification for copywriters. So I then, when I'm promoting that, I only send it to the segment of my email list who I know is a copywriter. Nobody else wants to hear about it, right?
nope,
It's irrelevant. So as soon as you're irrelevant, you've lost them. It happens very
yep,
quickly. So that's where that
yes,
segmentation piece can be really useful. And I know it
yep,
intimidates a lot of people, but it's actually super easy. I'm very
it is
non-techie
super easy.
person and like I can do it. So if you can ask the question, you can implement segmentation.
And I want to lead this a little bit, but I was going to ask you like what are some of the common mistakes that people make when like doing quizzes or making assessments? And I'm going to lead the horse a little bit. Number one is complicating it.
Yeah.
Right? Like this doesn't mean it has to be 80 questions. It doesn't mean it has to have this interactive platform. It means that whatever gets you clarity and a base recipe to put in the
Yeah.
oven that you can make adjustments and tweaks to. What are some of the other like pitfalls and traps that people fall into when it comes to making quizzes or assessments?
Well, the model that we've been given for most online quizzes is it's just not a very good model. So,
Mm-mm.
when you go to do something new in your business, you look for examples. And so with quizzes, the examples that people most often find are like BuzzFeed or the hyper stale boring, frankly, assessments that are like on a scale of 1 to 10, agree or disagree, yes or no, and you're answering 100 questions. Like you go to take
Yes.
the Colby assessment, and like I've just had in my mind for years to ask Colby if I can redo their whole assessment because it's so bad. Those
Yep.
questions, it's just like, what do you mean? What does any of this mean? So it's like using jargon, or even like a lot of Enneagram assessments. It's like on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you land? And it's just, to me, it's a lot more engaging when we can have circumstantial questions that feel hyper relevant, that are fun to answer, that kind of make you laugh. Not all
Yep.
niches, but even a serious wellness blood work niche like your clients, you can put a winky face, like you can bring some levity to it. And people appreciate that, even in a serious industry.
I would assume, yeah, I would assume, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just really excited to say this actually. I would assume that if the questions of your quiz create confusion, your quiz is not
Yeah,
good.
totally.
Right. And so, and then I feel like most of them lack humanity, which is the biggest secret
Yeah.
sauce, which is like, who are you? Right. And like, even to tie this back to what you said earlier, like when people are like, well, how do I build a customer journey? I'm like, well, you're going to build a quiz the same
Mm-hmm.
way. Imagine that your dream person is sitting in front of you and you can only tell them one thing to do or ask them one question like they were sitting in front of you. What would it be? And then after they answer that or take that step, what would the next one be?
Exactly.
And then what would the next one be?
Yeah.
And like, I joke with people, but I'm like, when you come to me and I whip you in my office and we put up sticky notes on the wall, I'm just imagining that your dream client walked in front of me. And as much as we'd like to think they can run a marathon, they need to take the first step first. And so, what's the first step,
Yeah.
right? Like, where do you go? And I also feel like the more of you that you add, the better. Like, who says when you're asking somebody about their, in my example that you gave earlier, like your personal relationship marketing roadmap? Like, I'll tell you the first question when you join a program of ours, I ask you what your favorite food is, right? Because mine's chocolate chip pancakes and I own that all day, right? And then I'll tell you why though, because back when I used to run masterminds, I would ask everybody, I'm like, hey, what's your favorite candy that every time you eat it makes you happy? And I'd ask it on the quiz. And then when they came to the mastermind event and they opened their box, what do you think was sitting in the box?
Yes.
Reese's, peanut butter cups, M&Ms, and some weird stuff that I had to have friends in other countries like import to me because I'm like, what are Tam Tams?
Right.
And I was like, all right, I need a friend in
Yeah.
Australia, right? Or, and so like I feel like I feel like everybody's afraid to be
Mm-hmm.
themselves, but being yourself is the number one lever that you can pull. And authenticity has been scientifically studied to be the most resonant frequency for human beings.
Totally. Exactly that, right? It's like weave in who you are. I asked this question in one of my quizzes: if you were a root vegetable, what would you be
What would
and
you be?
why?
Oh my God.
And people
Yes.
comment on that question all the time. They're like, that made me laugh, and it made me think, and it made me Google what a kohlrabi is.
I'm like instantly I just say sweet potato because I'm like addicted
Oh
to
yeah,
them and they're so good for you. Sometimes sweet, but many, many flavors. And that even like reminds me like don't be afraid to ask questions that make you laugh and chuckle as long as they get it.
yeah.
Like one of the best questions I was ever asked on a podcast that I stole was if you could be two spirit animals combined together, what would you be and why? And it was the first time somebody had asked me a question that I actually had to stop and think. And I was like, wait, oh, two? Whoa, hold on. We're playing in different territory now. And I remember I answered an orca whale and a bald eagle. And I've asked so many people that question. And I have people that are seasonally media trained that have been interviewed 100,000 times, it feels like. And I ask that. And then they stare me in the eyes for like 2 minutes and they're like, wait, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then they'll text me a week later. They're like, I'm changing my answer. I thought about this deeper. I want to be this animal and this animal,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
if we think about it, like our personality, like our identity is our greatest weapon as long as we use it authentically. And so, even if you're using quizzes, if you're using assessments, if you're doing marketing, be
yeah,
you because it's the easiest thing to do all the time because it's not an act, it's real and it's consistent. And consistency is what wins the game because people trust you. and they feel safe with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so then I got to ask one because like my old brain of like being in the quiz world for years back in the day, like do you have any like books you recommend or resources that you recommend that you absolutely love that help people like ask better questions or
Oh,
understand?
man, that's a good question. Specific to quizzes, not really,
Okay.
but there is this mental models book that I love. I have two copies of it on my shelf. It's called Super Thinking, and
Okay.
it's like a bible of cognitive biases.
I have them hanging on my wall.
Okay, so and just actually just understanding how people think and make decisions, I find that is really applicable to quizzes. And anything that inspires curiosity. So, and that's going to be different for everyone,
Yep.
right? But yeah, just that curiosity muscle. Like it's something that I think is conditioned out of us, and we have to peel back a lot of layers to rediscover it. And that's a personal journey, and involves probably books and ayahuasca and whatever else, right? Like individual things based on who you are. But the more you can reveal your innate curiosity, the easier it's going to be to
Yep.
create really powerful quizzes, assessments, and just marketing in general.
I'm so glad I asked you because it triggered my brain. I'm going to give everybody a gift. So, first, I do have a book recommendation for everybody on this muscle because the muscle is like divergent
Mm-hmm.
thinking and a little bit of like muscle memory. But Mike Michalowicz, who I love to pieces, his book Get Different, right? Get Different is an entire
Okay.
book on, and the book is written under the premise of like how to stand out in a crowded market. But what it really is what are all the divergent ways that you can be seen, that you can be noticed.
Amazing.
And speaking of mental models, I'm going to save everybody a book because there's an incredible website that I found, and these are the posters that are hanging on
Oh,
my
I think I
wall.
know this website.
Thethinkshop.org.
Maybe not.
I'll
Okay.
send it to you. But everybody, and we'll put this in the show notes. It's the thinking. I'm sorry, it's thethinkingshop.org. So THINKINGSHOP.org. And they give you the PDFs of these posters that you can hang on your wall. And they have the cognitive biases, logical fallacies, and brainstorming wall posters. So the brainstorming wall poster is all exercises to unlock this muscle that you're talking about. I have these hanging up in my
Cool.
office. And then the logical fallacies speaks to all the logical fallacies, and then the cognitive biases speak to like confirmation bias and Solomon's paradox. So you can start to understand these things, and they give all the downloads for free. So we'll
Wow.
put that link in the show. And just so everybody knows, by the way, if you have not picked up already that you need to go stalk everything that Chanti does and go find every one of her quizzes, number one, Instagram. I'm going to give you her Instagram right now. It's Chanti Zak, so CHANTIZAK, and we will have it linked in the show notes. And then her website, because I'm going to recommend that everybody go through every one of her quizzes and take notes. Sorry if your email list gets flooded with people that aren't fits, but I'm going to tell them all to divergently go play with
I'll
your
give you
quizzes.
one
And I think,
caveat. You can see the evolution of my own thinking and journey through each of those quizzes. So they're not all created equal at this point.
oh, and they shouldn't be, but they're beautiful. And then your website is shantizak.com,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Same thing, CHANTIZAK.com. Um, I literally feel like I could do 100 podcasts with you on quizzes, on
Likewise.
marketing, but I kind of want to like I don't know. I've never felt called to ask this, but like, is there anything that like we missed or that like you wouldn't be able to sleep at night if you didn't share with people, like that you just feel so called to share with them or teach them or any of that?
Oh my gosh. I think like just find little micro moments where you can ask questions and, surrender to the idea that you don't know all the answers. So it doesn't have to be this like grand quiz that you create. Like There's a quiz on my website that I spent 2 years creating because I just got into like way perfectionist mode. And you don't need to do that. You don't. Like you could just go
Mm-mm.
on Instagram stories for the next, do a personal 10-day challenge and ask a question each day. And just be open to what you learn and receive, and open to having your assumptions challenged, because they will be.
Keynote. They will be. They will be. I feel like mine are stretched every day, but it's also like, thank you. Like, thank you for helping me learn. Like, thank you for helping
Mm-hmm.
me communicate better. Like, I realize I am like a fire hose of confusion. And then even yesterday, I was on a call with some of my incredible clients who just became clients. And she paused me. She's like, all right, listen, bro, you speak in metaphors all day. I've not seen any of those three movies that you referenced for me to try to understand this. And I was
Right.
like, oh, I was like, you haven't seen the Truman Show? And she's like, no. And I was like, you haven't seen that? She's like, no. I'm like, okay, noted. And I was like, I need to also be clear that like just because I speak in story or because I know what it
Yeah.
means doesn't mean that everybody understands it. And a confused mind can't make a decision and take a step closer. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's on me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going back to kids' books then, or like parables or fairy tales or something like
Yeah.
that. And it's all an opportunity to grow. But even in this lens, like for everybody listening, like when you do quizzes, what you're really doing is you're creating an opportunity to connect with your clients and also get feedback to make it better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
And every ounce of marketing is not we build it once and then it works forever. It's you build it once knowing it's about to break, but it's typically not the offer. It's just the wrapping paper that gets people into it. And our job is to rewrap it and rewrap it by meeting people where they are. And then over time, you'll realize that there's entry points and there's times for you to be like, oh, holy moly, I have 5-figure earners in my audience, 6, 7, 8, 9, and billionaires. And I can't speak to them all the same, but I can speak to their values and their beliefs. But then they have different entry points into an ecosystem. And so the depth of it is also determined by the depth of your business and where you're spending this time. But I will say that like quizzes work and they work really, really well when they're done correctly. And I feel like we just found like the Taj Mahal of quiz women in the world. And we now have access to her. She shares all of this with us on the podcast. But I am like just honored that you even shared all this and that you came today. And like, I just thank you for
Oh,
being here.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's an
Yeah.
honor and a privilege. And yeah, wild. Full circle.
Yeah. And I think for everybody listening, like you do yourself a disservice if you didn't go get a little bit endowed into Shanti's world, because the more of this you consume and the more you pick up, the more you can practice it, right? And she nailed it. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can start on Instagram and do some story quizzes and connect with people and ask questions, right? You can do this on Facebook. You can ask
There's this
polls. Like the
tool, Feed
goal.
Letter, that I love. It's
Ooh, feed letter.
for email, and you can just pop it into your emails at the end of every email, or you can do a poll, and it's like, tell me what you thought of this email, or answer a question in a poll, and it's right in the email, so people can just interact right there. And it's a really great tool. And then you can build a wall of love with the responses you get. It's a whole thing. So it's something like that, super easy. Super easy.
Feed letter. I just found it. We'll put it in the show notes. It's feedletter.co. And it integrates with all of our favorite CRMs like ConvertKit, and do not use MailChimp unless you don't want to be in business. But ConvertKit, sorry, I said that out loud. Not sorry at all. And then did you happen to remember your tickle of that tool that you had at the beginning of the show that you were like, it's at the tip of my tongue?
Oh, what was it? It'll come back to me. I'll send
If
it
you
to you.
if you can't remember, for everybody listening, you're gonna have to go to the show notes of this one, because whenever she finds the tickle, she's gonna send it to me, and we'll call it like the tickle link we couldn't remember, so you know exactly which one it is. Um, but I will ask you my favorite last question. Just imagining that everybody listening to this show can't remember anything that we talked about, but you have the ability right now to impart any tattoo wisdom on their soul that they take with them forever, whether it's business or life or your heart. Like, what would your tattoo wisdom be for everybody?
Oh, my tattoo wisdom is probably around the topic of curiosity, and is that every question is a portal to a different reality.
Wow. I'm going to be unpacking that one a lot later in my meditation. I love that. I have nothing to add. Curiosity is a portal into another dimension or multiple ones, and some semblance that tickled a lot. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Holy moly. Yeah. Yeah, we all get to be a little bit more curious in life, and I feel like it will unlock a whole lot of possibility for everybody. Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to land this plane. That was a gift. That was the best hour and 20 minutes I have spent all week, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. So thank you so much for being here. Like from the bottom of my heart,
Likewise.
I mean it. And yeah, for everybody listening, thank you for listening to another slice of this Mind of George, the one that belongs in a straitjacket. So we only share the safest parts with you. And on her curiosity answer, I will say this, one of my favorite ever quotes is: a student says, I already know, and a master says, thanks for the reminder. And this feels like one of those reminders to always get back to the basics, to get back to what matters, which is connecting with the people that we're out here inspiring to help. We're selling services and products to, making sure that we do our dandiest to be there to support them. And so make sure you check out Chanti. We'll have her Instagram linked. We'll have her website linked. We'll have every one of these resources that we remember to send you, and we'll put them all in the show notes. And at minimum, please do me a favor and send her a message on Instagram and just say thank you, or share anything that tickled or landed or resonated, because I already know without asking that it will fill her
Good.
bucket, and it will only make her be more validated to keep doing this, because we are going to have you back 100%. And I said it on the podcast, so you can't say no, not like Lisa.
I'm a full yes. 100%.
Amazing. All right, everybody. Well, we will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs, but either way, we're out.